Somewhere in a server room, a hospital, or an airport departure board near you, there's a chunky 30-year-old port still quietly doing its job, and it's not the fancy new one. Every connector in this video was supposedly killed off by a newer one. But almost none of them actually died, because each one hides a secret trick it still does better than anything else. And the newest port of all? It's quietly wearing every single one of them as a mask. Let's start at the very beginning. Composite RCA. You know these, the red, white, and yellow plugs that hooked up every DVD player and game console for decades. Yellow carried the video, the other two carried sound. The obvious advantage was that a 5-year-old could use it, match the colors, push them in, done. But here's the hidden one nobody expects. On the chunky old CRT TVs of the day, RCA's soft, slightly fuzzy picture wasn't a flaw. It was exactly what old games were built for. Pixel artists back then leaned on that blur on purpose, letting it smooth rough edges into shading they could never have drawn. Plug that same retro console into a razor-sharp modern TV over HDMI, and it can actually look worse. Every jagged pixel and lazy shortcut suddenly laid bare. That's why hardcore retro fans still swear by it. RCA doesn't just show old games, it shows them the way they were meant to be seen. But split its one crowded signal in two, and that same old TV could look noticeably sharper. How? S-Video. Say hello to the little round connector that quietly outclassed RCA. Here's the trick. RCA crams the brightness of the picture and the color of the picture down a single wire, and mashing them together breeds fuzz and noise. Video splits them onto two separate paths. Brightness over here, color over there. That one change cuts the mess and sharpens the whole image. Same TV, same console, a visibly cleaner picture, text easier to read, edges tighter, just from keeping two signals out of each other's way. A Nintendo 64 or a PlayStation 2 over S-Video genuinely looked a tier better than the same machine on those yellow plugs. It was about the closest thing to a free upgrade the 90s ever handed out. But over in Europe, one giant, clunky connector was pulling off something even the sharpest S-Video couldn't. Meet the beast, SCART. If you grew up in Europe, you know this monster. A huge 21-pin slab that looked like it could survive a car crash. Its everyday selling point was tidiness. Back when TVs needed a tangle of separate cables, SCART carried picture and sound in one fat plug. But the hidden gem is the quality it could carry. When your console and your TV both supported it, SCART could send something called RGB. The red, green, and blue of the image, kept perfectly separate and pure, about as clean as an analog signal ever got. That's the catch though. Plenty of cheap European sets had the SCART socket, but only wired it for a basic, blurry signal. So you needed gear that actually did RGB to get the magic. Get the right pairing, and a PlayStation 1 or a Super Nintendo through RGB SCART on an old CRT looks jaw-droppingly good even today. Colors that punch, edges that are knife-sharp. Collectors hunt down the right cables and sets for a reason. So the analog era had its secrets. But every one of them still needed a clean, perfect connection to look right. What if a port could just not care and work anyway? That's the one that refuses to die. VGA. Here it is, the answer to that mystery from the start of the video. The big blue plug with two little screws, the one still lurking in server rooms, projectors, hospitals, and airport screens all over the planet. On paper it's ancient, analog, fuzzy at high resolutions, a dinosaur. So why won't it die? Because its picture is beautifully, gloriously simple. Sure, VGA has a tiny side channel that asks your monitor which resolutions it can do, but the actual image is raw analog that paints on screen without waiting for permission. And here's the key. There's no copy protection gate. HDMI has one, called HDCP, a digital bouncer that checks your gear before it shows a thing, and when that check trips up, you get the dreaded black screen of nothing. VGA has no such bouncer to fail. Worst case, it falls back to a safe, slightly ugly resolution, but it still shows you something instead of going dark. And when the signal's weak, it just goes a little fuzzy instead of dropping dead. That too simple to break reliability is the exact reason it's the fallback the pros keep around for when everything fancier throws a tantrum. Simplicity, it turns out, is its own kind of superpower. Now, the moment screens stopped being fuzzy and turned razor sharp. DVI. This white connector was the big leap from analog to digital, and all of a sudden, text and images looked clean and exact instead of soft. But DVI's real hidden trick is who it's secretly related to. Electrically, the video signal DVI sends is almost identical to HDMI's, which means a plain $2 adapter, no chips, no power, no conversion, can turn a DVI port into an HDMI 1, and the picture just works, because under the metal, they're speaking the same video language. One catch worth knowing: standard DVI doesn't carry sound. So that cheap adapter hands you a flawless image, but the audio won't come with it. You'd plug that in separately, and there's more tucked in there. A beefier version called Dual Link DVI could push higher refresh rates, so some of the very first high-refresh esports monitors leaned on it to hit 120 Hz. Certain DVI ports even carried the old analog VGA signal too, so a single adapter got you a VGA screen. DVI was a quiet multi-tool. It handed us the sharp picture, but the next port added the one thing DVI forgot, plus a hidden remote control most people use without ever noticing: HDMI. Everybody knows HDMI's obvious win: one cable for both picture and sound, plug in a console or a streaming stick and you're set. But that's not the hidden advantage. This is. It's called HDMI-CEC, and it's the reason that when you switch on your PlayStation, your TV wakes up on its own and flips to the right input like magic. Down that one cable, your devices can quietly boss each other around. A single remote can run the whole stack. Most people use this every single day and have no clue it even has a name. And there's a second secret: ARC, and its newer version, eARC. Normally sound travels one way, from the box to the TV. ARC lets the TV send audio backwards down the very same cable to a soundbar, with no extra wire at all. So HDMI isn't really a video cable, it's a tiny control network wearing a video cable's clothes. But for serious PC gaming, there's a rival port packed with its own tricks, starting with one that turns a single output into 3 monitors. DisplayPort. Built by the PC world, for the PC world, DisplayPort is the connector serious gamers reach for. Everyone brags about its bandwidth for high refresh rates. True, but obvious. The hidden superpower is called MST, and it's a little wild. You run one cable from your PC to a monitor, then another cable from that monitor to a second one, then a third. Several displays daisy-chained in a line off a single port. No graphics card bristling with outputs required. Office desks and trading floors quietly live on this. 2 more small secrets. Many DisplayPort plugs have a tiny latch that physically locks in, so a kicked cable doesn't kill your screen mid-match. And DisplayPort is royalty-free, no license fee, which is the real reason it rules PCs and graphics cards while pricier HDMI rules the TV. It'll even output HDMI through a cheap passive adapter. Now shrink this whole thing down, and you get the little port that accidentally drew the blueprint for the future. Mini DisplayPort. Quick one, but it matters. Mini DisplayPort was exactly that. Full DisplayPort power in a shrunk-down plug, made famous by years of MacBooks before USB-C came along. On its own, not thrilling. But here's the hidden bit of history. That exact little shape got borrowed to become the very first Thunderbolt connector. So this tiny port you probably forgot about is the physical ancestor of the do-everything cable we're racing toward. And that cable pushed one port to rule them all to an almost ridiculous extreme, enough to carry an entire graphics card. Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt looks exactly like USB-C, but under the hood, it's a monster. Its headline trick is speed plus doing everything at once. Displays, storage, charging, all down one wire. But the hidden advantage is genuinely mind-bending. Thunderbolt can tunnel something called PCIe, the same high-speed lane your graphics card slots into inside a desktop, straight out through the cable. In plain English, it can stretch a slice of your computer's motherboard outside the machine. That's how a thin, fanless laptop can plug into an external box holding a full desktop graphics card and suddenly game like a tower PC. One cable turns an Ultrabook into a workstation, then back into an Ultrabook. The catch is cost. Thunderbolt gear runs pricier, so it aims at creators and pros more than budget builds. Which brings us to the port that took all of this, every trick in the video, and hid them inside one tiny universal shape. And it's probably on the device you're watching this on right now. USB-C. Here's the twist the whole video's been building toward. USB-C looks like just another charging plug, but it's the closest thing we've got to one port to replace them all. And the secret is that USB-C isn't really a video technology at all. It's a universal shape that wears the other ports as masks. There's a mode called DisplayPort Alt mode, where the port literally becomes a DisplayPort on the inside and pipes that signal straight out. It can carry Thunderbolt. Through adapters, it turns into HDMI, or DVI, or even that ancient VGA. One little oval doing the job of every connector we just met. That's the endgame of the whole arms race. Not a new winner, but a single shape swallowing all of them. But that power hides a nasty trap. And this is the one thing to remember. Not every USB-C port can actually do video. Two ports can look completely identical, same oval, same laptop, and one drives a 4K monitor while the other barely charges your phone. Same face, wildly different talents. The mask is invisible until you check. Look for a tiny DisplayPort D or a lightning bolt Thunderbolt symbol printed beside the port. That's how you spot the real deal. The cheat sheet. Screenshot time. Every port and its hidden trick in one shot. RCA shows old games the authentic way. S-Video splits the signal to sharpen it for free. RGB SCART is Europe's retro gold. VGA is too dumb to fail, so it's the fallback that always works. DVI is HDMI's electrical twin, one cheap adapter apart. HDMI is secretly a remote control network through CEC and eARC. DisplayPort daisy chains your monitors and locks in tight. Mini DisplayPort became the shape of Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt tunnels a whole graphics card down one wire, and USB-C wears every one of them as a mask. So which do you actually use today? For a gaming PC, DisplayPort. For your TV and console, HDMI. For a thin laptop, USB-C. Just check that it does video. For a stubborn old projector, keep a VGA adapter in your bag. It'll rescue a meeting one day. And if you're hooking up a retro console, skip the yellow RCA plug. An S-Video or an RGB SCART cable makes those old games look worlds better. And if a USB-C port won't throw up a picture, now you know why. Go hunt for that little logo. That's every DisplayPort, and the secret each one is still quietly hiding. And hey, this was only the ports that carry a picture. Your PC's got a whole crowd of other ones too, the USB, Ethernet, and audio ports, and I untangled every single one of those in my Every Computer Port Explained in 10 Minutes video, if you want the complete set. If this cleared things up, a like genuinely helps the channel out. And tell me down in the comments, what's the weirdest port you've ever been forced to use? See you in the next one.